Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sochi. I'm PM at Microsoft, and I work a lot on the Secure Boot key rolling work stream. This is my first PlugFest conference, so very excited and slightly nervous. But yeah, with me.
All right, just to jump into it, my name is Doug. I am a firmware engineer on Core UEFI. I've been helping out a lot on the technical support on the Secure Boot side, so trying to give technical solutions to some of the problems that we're facing that I think the ecosystem is aware of. But let's just jump into it. So just to say this up front, there's going to be a lot of information about Secure Boot. I've included a lot of links, but I'm sure that we're not covering everything. So please feel free to ask questions. There's also links at the end that you can reference. So for the first time in 15 years, the Secure Boot certificates that are being shipped in every platform in the world are expiring. So yes, that is a big deal. Secure Boot underpins, the Secure Boot certificates underpin Secure Boot for the ecosystem. Right now, we are breaking them up into, so the Windows production CA is going to be the Windows UFI CA 2023. The UFI CA will be broken up into two separate certificates. That way, it gives you more flexibility if you just want to support option ROMs or not support option ROMs. You'll have that choice. The thing that I must make very clear is that we need all platforms to be updated. And what that means is that the factory defaults, which include the certificates that when you roll back to factory defaults, when you re-enable Secure Boot, that will put those old certificates back into the active variables so that when they try to boot into Linux or Windows, will likely cause them to hit a Secure Boot violation. So that is a thing to be aware of. Let me continue on. So I've seen this in the news a lot, that Linux will not boot as of last month on 9/11 because of the expiration date on a shim bootloader. I want to be very clear that UEFI does not care about the expiration date. It will continue to boot. And as long as they have the certificate in the DB, you're going to continue to boot. Now, there could be bugs in the firmware that we're just not aware of that exist in very few platforms, but if you're using the EDK2 version, you're going to be fine. OEMs that ship devices will need to update their firmware to include the 2023 CAs if they're not already. It's expected that if they are shipping devices without the 2023 CAs, they will receive support calls moving forward because once that expiration date passes, we won't be able to use those certificates to sign anymore. Let's see. This will be painful for particularly external graphics cards and option ROMs because there's not always a good path to update those option ROMs. And if you have a system that is shipping with only 2023 CAs and it's a option ROM that was signed with the 2011 certificate, that just will not work. So you're going to see support calls from that. The other thing that I want to point out is that if you have customers that you work with like HTTP boot or Pixie boot, those can only serve a single image to the platform. And if they don't have the correct CAs in place, that image will also hit Secure Boot violation.
Yeah. So now getting to the solutions that we have and how Microsoft is addressing the transition story, we're grouping devices into like different segments. So starting out with new devices. So this is where it is mostly an OEM-led effort where OEMs should be including the 2023 certificates on new devices as they're building it from the factory floor. So included in the factory Secure Boot default, so devices are born with the 2023 certificates included. And the goal is we want to reduce and really essentially just stop the inflow of devices that still are only supporting the 2011 certificates into the market. So for in-market devices, now this is where we have like three different segments. The first being the Microsoft managed devices. And really, it's just called Microsoft Managed because of the approach we're taking to address this set of devices. And this is where we designed a controlled feature rollout approach in order to update these devices to support the new certificates. And I'll go into more detail in the next slide. The other segment is the customer managed devices. Now, this is where Microsoft will be taking more of an assisting role and enabling enterprise IT admins in order to update the devices in their environment to the new certificates. Then the last is just devices running on legacy BIOS, so like secure boot disabled, there is no remediation path for these devices. So OEM actions to take in order to transition to the 2023 certificates. So like I mentioned, for new devices, it's essentially build new devices with the 2023 certificates from the factory so that when they come into the market, they already have 2023 support. And really, this is the best state for a device to be in. Today, Microsoft has ability to collect data from devices that are being built in the factories when the OA3 tool is run. So this is our licensing tool. So we're able to work with OEMs when we notice that their devices are still coming up with just the 2011 in order to reach a solution so that we can start seeing more devices coming up with 2023 support. For in-market devices, there are couple steps that we need OEM collaboration for. So the first is for devices where Microsoft is taking an active role in updating, referring back to the Microsoft managed devices I brought up. As we roll out to these devices, we will notice issues with the firmware, and this is where OEM needs to take like an active role to push out firmware updates to unblock those devices so we can now continue rolling out to those devices. Next is for in-market devices, we still need the OEMs to push out firmware updates to update that secure boot factory default value to now include the 2023 certificate. Because essentially, in the place where OEM or the enterprise is updating those devices, we're still only updating the active variables. And in the case where someone toggles off secure boot, like essentially blows away the protections that have in place, so still puts it back in the state of only supporting 2011. So really, updating those default values is what gives us the best case. Next is for OEMs that are still, they've only provided just they haven't provided the PK signed CAC updates. We're still asking for OEMs to provide those. We have the GitHub repo that we referenced there, where it contains a full list of every single PK sign CAC update that Microsoft has received so far. And the ask is for OEMs to keep providing those because those devices cannot be updated today if we do not have a PK sign CAC package. And in the case where OEMs have like lost PK or expired PK, there is a new feature coming to Windows soon. So we'll be able to allow OEMs to update the PK value and prevent any BitLocker recovery or VSM master key resealing issues. And that is coming soon. I think, what's the last thing? There's one more thing. Yeah. So we still want OEMs to continue doing the pen tests of the CAC and DB update packages on their devices so we can just catch firmware issues as incompatibility issues as early as possible. So we have instructions for that in the reference slides as well. So yeah. And then this is just our guidance for how new OEMs should be building new platforms. So if you're building any device, 25H2 devices that are preloading Windows, the ask is for, you can include the OEM PK, and there is the Microsoft PK for folks that no longer want the hassle of managing their PK. You can just go with that option. Then for the CAC, include the 2023 Microsoft CAC. For DB, the Windows UVCA 2023, and then the latest DBX package. But if you intend to support Linux, third-party option RAM capability, then you need the Microsoft UVCA, the 2011 certificate, and then you need the Microsoft UVCA 2023 and the option RAM CA 2023 as well. And now we're getting to the fun part. So this is our Microsoft managed devices that I referenced earlier. So I want to go into detail of what we're actually doing and the update process for these devices. So starting out, I think early last year, Microsoft started working with OEMs in order to establish what we call a grouping system for devices, and we call these buckets. So we reached out to each OEM, and it was essentially, can you give us a bucket definition, a way to group devices so that once we select one device from that bucket and apply the update to it, the expectation is however that singular device reacts, every other device in this bucket will react the same. So OEMs came back to us with various definitions for their buckets, and we've categorized the buckets that fall into this Microsoft update approach. So far, we have over 2 million distinct buckets in our ecosystem. So this is just to give you an idea of how much of a lift this is to update. And essentially, now that we have these bucket definitions for the different buckets that exist, in the case where the OEM didn't provide a bucket definition or we weren't able to get that information from the OEM, we apply what we call a generic bucket definition. So same characteristics that we've seen so far that are similar across OEMs, like OEM model, OEM name, firmware version, et cetera, in order to just group these devices in some way. And the goal is we start out with one device per bucket and then incrementally go up to what we call a green light stage. So this is where we've seen 4 consecutive successes from applying the update for devices in this bucket. So once we hit that green light, then we transition into our progressive gradual CFR rollout. So we're going 1%, 5% until we reach full saturation. Now, I've talked about this solution. You might think, oh, all devices fall into this category, but there is an excluded population. Since this design relies mainly on the device sending us a success signal, any device that is not sending telemetry is automatically excluded from taking this approach. We're also excluding server, NXT, like out of support or older versions of Windows, virtual machines, et cetera. I have the full list up there, but just because the device is excluded from this solution doesn't mean Microsoft isn't doing anything about it. It's just not going to take the CFR, the gradual feature rollout route. And this is where most of them benefit from, which is customer manage. So as I mentioned, we'll be doing the gradual CFR to a set of devices. So the process is we're going to start out with internal Microsoft devices because we can handle the most risk as we kind of encounter issues. And if there's an issue, we can get access to the physical device in order to root cause, et cetera. So we start out with internal Microsoft, go out to external insiders, and then eventually external retail before we get up to enterprise. Now, the goal is that as we're rolling out through the first few phases, we would have reached a point where we're able to make a confidence assessment and say, this bucket, we've been seeing consistent success in rolling out to this, so we can categorize this as a high confidence bucket. And at this point, we're saying that if we provide this information to the enterprise and you go 100% on devices that fall into these buckets, Microsoft is saying we're 100% behind you. We think that that'll be successful. So those are classes of devices that will benefit the most from what we're calling the bucket confidence data. So this is a data set that we will package and ship in the LCU for enterprise IT admins to take advantage of and assess if their devices in their environment fall into what we call the high confidence buckets. For those devices, they can go ahead and apply the update 100% because we have tested enough in our rollout. The next segment are the unknown buckets. So these are devices that in our rollout, we just haven't seen enough representation of the devices in that bucket in order to make a high confidence assessment. So at this point, Microsoft is taking an assistive role. So we'll provide tooling in Intune, group policies, et cetera, but we don't have enough in our population in order to give you the green light signal and say, go ahead to full rollout. The last segment, these are the red, and I put those as blocked buckets. So these are buckets where in our CFR rollout, we have hit significant issues that either BitLocker recovery or like put the device in a state where it's unrecoverable. And we're actively working with the OEM in order to root cause and identify a fix in order to address those devices. So in the case where the device is out of support from the OEM and it's a firmware issue, then we'll mark those as blocked, and the advices do not apply the update to those devices as they cannot handle it. And essentially, that would be a part of the information that goes into the bucket confidence data so IT admins can make accurate assessment of their environment.
So we're going to start talking about signing strategy for third-party applications and option ROMs. I know this is a topic that a lot of people have been asking about. Starting October 20th, each submission will be returned with two unique binaries. You're going to have one that has been signed by the UFCA 2011, one that has also been signed with the UFCA 2023 or option ROM, depending if it was an option ROM that was provided to us. There will be multiple binaries returned to you through October 20th to June 2026, at which point our HSM will not allow any more signing to occur. So we will not be able to return back a 2011 one. So there are some things that we're asking that you do ahead of time, which is prepare to handle two return files, continue shipping both binaries until UFI trust anchors are updated. And if you choose to take the route of taking the unique signatures on both of those binaries and combining them, effectively turning it into a dual sign image, just make sure that you're testing it on platforms you expect that to work on. I know that this works in EDK2 today, or at least there is code for it. I don't know how well tested it is. So let's see. Oh, sorry, skipped a slide. There we go. All right, so there is also new third-party signing requirements that are coming. I believe Sochi and her team are working on them. These updates are currently under review with external partners and the open source community. One major thing is that if you are submitting a binary, you will be required to go through an annual security audit conducted and approved by a vendor in the OCP SAFE program. For shim, and specifically shims that are handing off to a GPL licensed bootloader that are open source, those are sufficiently rigorous and meet that requirement, so they will not be required to do that. The latest information, visit that link, and Sochi and her team can help you with that. So this is the other thing that a lot of people are asking questions about. Right now, there is a lot of work happening in USST to figure out what post-quantum is going to look like for UEFI past, starting in 2027 and beyond, right? So for third-party signing, Microsoft is not yet comfortable with, or first-party and third-party signing, Microsoft is not yet comfortable signing with just pure post-quantum algorithms, right? So just MLDSA. So there has been some evaluation over hybrid, which is RSA 2048 plus MLDS 87, but that would require significant changes to UEFI. And there's high probability that things could go wrong. The other approach is a composite signature, which as of last week is now being considered for standardization. So the expectation is that IETF will standardize that by the end of this year. And if so, that is likely the approach that we are going to adopt. Questions?
Could you explain the workflow to update KEK when the PK is managed by OEM?
Do you want to know like the update flow with Windows, or do you mean in UEFI?
Say KEK will be issued by Microsoft.
Correct.
Will be signed by PK of the OEM.
Yep.
Sent to Microsoft. And then will it be a part of Windows update? Or?
It would be a part of a Windows update, yes.
Okay.
Because it needs to be, for Windows, it needs to be BitLocker aware and VSM aware. Otherwise, the customer will lose secrets or be put into a BitLocker recovery.
Is there any way to bypass this signing process, sending to Microsoft, just put the KEKs somehow?
Directly on the machine. If you don't have Windows, yes, there are other options you can do. But if you have a customer that depends on BitLocker, you're likely to put them in BitLocker recovery if you bypass Windows.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, over here on your left. Jim Van Vagel from NVIDIA. Nice to see you in person. I've been waiting all week. Am I still on? The first thing, the messaging about expiration, still letting things boot. I think, were you going to publish something that says that? I'm getting blown up every day, and I'm sure my counterparts at AMD and Intel are.
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely we will have language that explicitly calls that out. I do think we have a blog that went out a couple weeks ago that does allude to that as well for the third party.
So
I will-
it will say, like, you'll still be able to see something.
Yes,
Expiration doesn't matter.
expiration affects signing capabilities is what we call out, but does not affect booting. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to point people to that
Yes.
and say, hey, we're okay. Then the other thing, the dual signing option, we mentioned the possibility of that. Are you asserting you definitely will not be dual signing, and that's on all of us?
Yes, so we will be providing you two packages, 2011 and 2023. Now we're giving you the ability to go ahead and combine those signatures on a binary, but Microsoft will not dual sign your packages.
Okay, and then the final question, this scenario when you have a new system that may just have the new cert and you take an old graphics card, what's the plan? Just because we're in that awkward position, like you don't see something.
Right.
Like you can even say, hey,
Right.
do this.
I don't think we have, and this is just me speaking because I'm not exactly sure what the Microsoft thing is. That I don't think that we have an expected timeline for when we're going to say remove the 2011 UVCA. Yeah. That would be required to boot graphics cards.
Okay, and then so if we had a bug fix or something, we wouldn't be able to get signed with the old. So I think we were talking about, like, is there the ability or option to do a shim that, hey, we have that old one signed that now allows the new one to run? Like, because if we have a bug fix that we want to push out, how will we be able to do that after the...
Are you asking for assistance creating that shim, or are you saying whether or not that's allowed?
Whether that's allowed.
I think that would be
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think that's it. Thanks for letting me ask a gazillion questions. I'm sure we'll talk later.
Have a hand.
Just a quick one. What's the expected size for the MLDSA that the CA is planning to use?
I am honestly still trying to get an answer on that myself.
Okay. All right. That's good. Thanks.
This is more of a comment, but for our sustaining platforms, this has kind of put us in an odd place with all of these certificates, because we've sized in VRAM, based on 4 or 5 years ago, and we're adding all these certificates, and this is causing us to go into reclaim more often, which is never good, right? Mm-hmm. Just takes some time, but it's just a comment. I don't expect you to solve it, but if you wanted to, you could.
I think we are discussing possible solutions for that in USST. I don't think that we have an answer for the ecosystem today.
So on systems that only have old certificate, the Windows will keep working until the bootloader is upgraded, right? I mean,
we will not attempt to upgrade it unless we see the 2023 CA.
That was my question.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.